Welcome to Season 5 of the SARE Ladies podcast. This is where Asian American Pacific Islander women carve out their own space in real estate and shake up the status quo. Join your hosts, Anita Wong and Ashley Cow, as they dive deep into bold strategies, personal growth, and everything it takes to own it. From building wealth to boosting confidence. Let's jump in.
Welcome back to the Season 5 of the SARE Ladies podcast, where we talk about real estate, representation, and rewriting the rules of wealth. I'm your host, Anita Wong, real estate investor, syndicator, and co-founder of Give Rise Capital.
And I'm Ashley Cow, commercial mortgage lender, investor, recovering tech employee, and your co-host.
Today's conversation, I've been looking forward to a really long time. Today, we get to sit down with Maggie Chui, the co-founder and COO of Asian Hustle Network, which is a global movement of 250,000 members of Asian entrepreneurs, creatives, and change makers.
Yes, Maggie has an incredibly unique experience of bridging culture and business. So, we're here to speak today about the evolution of hustle culture, changes she's seen, and what it means to be a part of a new hustle generation that is beyond the one that our parents were a part of. Welcome, Maggie.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be a part of this podcast. So very excited to chat with both of you, Ashley and Anita.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here because we had such a great time. We saw you in person. I saw you in person at the anti-conference. You attended our anti-conference because you live in Las Vegas, and we just had a really great dinner. We had hot pot, and we just had a really great time. So I'm really excited to continue our conversation here, and just kind of have our audience get to know you and what you guys are doing and just the amazing work that you have been doing at the Asian Hustle Network. So let's start off. Tell us about you and what was the initial aha moment that got you to co-found a movement like Asian Hustle Network?
Yes, thank you. That's a great question. So yes, like you said, I'm based in Las Vegas, but was born and raised in San Francisco. I come from a background of tech as well as finance, as well as local government. I come from a very non-entrepreneurial background. So both of my parents are actually not entrepreneurs. My dad worked at the same printing company for over 40 years, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And they actually discouraged me and my siblings to go into entrepreneurship because they wanted us to graduate, get a well-paying job, and then retire at the age of 65 because it was the safe route, right? So like the first job that I had was in local government, and they liked that because they knew it was stable, it had good benefits. But I knew that I kind of wanted to do a little bit more in terms of like express my creativity. So I went into tech, but wanted to kind of dabble on something else on the side in terms of a more creative aspect. I did kind of dabble into real estate as well as staging, so interior design. So I was staging properties that were on the market. And at the time, I was going to a lot of real estate events, conferences, meetups. It didn't have to exactly be related to real estate, but they're just like networking events. And noticed that there was a pattern that I saw, and this was back in when I was living in San Francisco. And although San Francisco is so diverse, I didn't see a lot of Asian representation in terms of the speakers at these events. And so this kind of happened over and over again, and realized that Asian entrepreneurs are very underrepresented or misrepresented, and I wanted to create a platform or a community to bring these Asian entrepreneurial stories to light, or just have somewhere where we could have a safe space and ask questions, offer feedback, share our stories, right? And typically, a lot of us, I think, feel like we want to share our stories, but we don't know where to, or if it's appropriate to, right? Because entrepreneurship is often seen as something that's unconventional, especially in the API community. And a lot of it stems from our parents, kind of teaching us that we should go the conventional path to success. And it's not their fault. It's just a lot of them are immigrants, and a lot of us are children of immigrants. And they come to this country thinking, of this American dream, but as they come to this country, they're given jobs that a lot of the others don't want to do, such as open up a laundromat or a liquor store or restaurant, right? This is like backbreaking hard labor work. But a lot of times it's very, very hard, right? And they know that, and they know what the risk involved is. And so, we're often told by our parents, like, just have a safe job. But we are living in a different generation now, right? And there's so many other ways to make money. And, we're living in a digital era where you can just make money sitting in front of your computer, right? So I think that there was a lot of commonality in terms of like people's stories and how they wanted to go into a more creative path, or they just wanted to pursue their passion, something that goes against what their parents had told them. And that aha moment was when we decided to start a Facebook group, me and my co-founder. And we did that because at the time Facebook groups was very popular. I think because everyone wanted to have this forum where they could, connect with others. Just like think of like back then when we had like AOL chat rooms, like it's kind of like that. But we decided to start this Facebook group called Asian Hustle Network, and we made the mission very clear. It was just like a platform for you to share your story about your entrepreneurial background, about your, any challenges that you have maybe. And the community quickly grew. It was like 1,000 in the first night. And that was totally unexpected, but it got to 1 month, it was 10,000. And then 2 months later, 20,000, 3 months, 30,000. And then now we're 5-6 years in. We have over 250,000 members, followers, and subscribers across all of our platforms. And so I think it really goes to show, especially because we, started it right before the pandemic. A lot of people in the API community were looking for a community to turn to and to, connect with. And so for better or for worse, it was a great space for us to connect with others in the API community. And Asian Hustle Network served as that platform and that community.
Yeah. And I'm curious about the word hustle, or why, I mean, obviously why you guys chose it, but, do you think that that word has changed from you first founded Asian Hustle Network to where it is now?
Oh, for sure. Yes. I think at the time when we had originally started the Facebook group or the community, a lot of people had talked to us about the word hustle, like, oh, maybe you should change the word hustle and, swap it with something else because it does have a bad connotation to it sometimes. People often say, like, oh, I got hustled, or this person
Mm.
hustled me, right? And I can see why that word has a bad connotation, but we wanted to redefine that word. And now, a lot of people think of hustle as like your side hustle, or, I'm hustling to, make a career or make a living, or, make something out of myself. And I think that's, incredible. What we've been able to do is like, when you think of the word hustle now, you think of the dream, or like what your passion is, or what your side business is, and just like really going hard to achieve the life that you want is like putting in the work and actually going to get that dream or like achieve that dream of yours is like putting in the hustle. So yeah, we really wanted to redefine and change the definition of that word.
Hmm. So I mean, back then, I mean, did you see how, I mean, have you seen a shift about how Asian entrepreneurs are defining success and hard work? And has that even changed the trajectory of where AHN has gone and how it continues to serve Asian entrepreneurs?
Yeah, that's a great question. I definitely do think there has been a shift. And this really dawned on me when I went to visit Asia, specifically Vietnam and my motherland, Hong Kong. You can see that the way that they work is very different, right? Especially if you go to like the more rural areas, you can see like people will have all these like storefronts, and you lay them out. They lay out all their products in front of their store. And so every single morning, these store owners are opening up at like the crack of dawn at 7 a.m. or even earlier, and they will lay out all of their products in front of their store. And these are like big products. Maybe they're like furniture or knickknacks or something like that. And you walk across these streets and you see how beautifully laid out it is, but it's a great way for them to market their products, right? And that actually made me think like, wow, these people are working really hard to, put all of these products out there really early in the morning, and then at the end of the day, they have to bring everything back in. And obviously, we as an API, in the API community, we're often told you have to work hard. Like if you work hard, then success will come. But we've seen that is not true, because even if you do work really hard, you still have to make sure that you have enough time to rest, right? If you're not resting, then you can't really put your all into your business, right? And you're going to burn out pretty much. And so I think that there is a shift in how the Asian community is defining hard work and success, because now we're saying, like, you not only have to work hard, but you have to work smart, and you have to set up strategies to make sure that you make things easier for yourself, so that you can focus on operations and strategy and bringing in deals, right? So I definitely think that there has been a shift in the Asian community, especially because there's so many other ways that we're making money nowadays. But it's incredible to see that dynamic and that change as it relates to how maybe people in Asia work hard, as opposed to how Asian entrepreneurs in America are working hard.
Yeah, I hear that. I feel like it took me a long time for even myself to unwind that hard work mentality, or I feel like I had to DIY everything, especially when it came to like real estate. I was like, had to be the one shoveling the floors, like, or asking my own family members to be like bringing the flooring. And, I think that there is so much of that, like I can do it myself, or all of that, right? And I felt like I wasn't successful as an entrepreneur unless I was the one kneeling on the ground and like scrubbing the floors. And I think it was like a big shift for me to consider like the holistic, like my time as valuable too.
Yeah.
um and I think once I did begin to exponentially grow the business, asking for help and actually building relationships over being able to say that I can do all those things myself. But it took a really, really long time
Mhm.
for even my parents to see that, be like, because they'll always say like, I could do it for cheaper. You should have done that yourself. And I'm like, okay, well then I wouldn't have a life. I wouldn't be sitting here at this dinner table with you, because it would just break my back to do it,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Um, and so I guess when you see, what are parents' versions of success, or the boomer style of success and survival, I mean, have you kind of seen all that shift, and how it's transitioned to more of a world of self-expression and holistic living, more mental
Mhm.
health focused? Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, obviously, mental health was not a conversation in our parents' generation. There was very little research on it, and uh, that's a very deep topic to talk about, right? Because our parents, they probably wanted to have a different life than they do now, right? But they had to give their all, um, and it's not their fault. It's just they weren't given the resources that they needed, that we have today, in terms of like, oh, how do we access mental health services, especially for API entrepreneurs that are dealing with silent burnout and dealing with all these other pressures in our lives, for example, expectations versus what we're actually doing, right? But I do think that our parents, well, they pretty much want us to be successful, obviously, but then they can't understand what that success looks like unless we're able to like show it in front of their face. So like if let's say we're pursuing our passions, and we are maybe going into real estate, or maybe we're going into some creative work, right? But a lot of our parents don't want to take that risk, right? Even like Asian parents nowadays, like they don't invest, they don't buy houses, because it's a lot of money, right, up front, to them, and they don't want to take that risk. But then until we're able to actually, see some sort of revenue, or maybe have like a feature in a Asian newspaper or something, that's when they're like, oh, okay, oh, maybe it's you are doing something that is working. So it's like, it's really interesting, because that's what happened with me with Asian Hustle Network. Is like, my parents obviously didn't know what I was doing with AHN, and it's something that's unheard of, especially to them in their age, at their like in their generation. So it wasn't until, I started having more features and having more events and actually getting like awards and stuff like that, they're like, oh, okay, like maybe there is something there that you're doing that's, working out. So it's just really interesting to see that dynamic.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because you mentioned that they wanted you to have a stable job and kind of grow your career that way. And so when you decided to pivot to Asian Hustle, like how was that conversation with your parents, or what was like the initial conversation like?
Oh, that's a great question. I actually didn't tell them that. So, I told they knew that I started something that was like of an online community, but eventually I had quit my 9 to 5, my corporate job, to pursue AHN full time. I actually didn't tell them for about a year. And obviously I was scared. I didn't know what they would say. And I didn't want them, the most important thing is like, I didn't want them to worry.
Hmm.
I didn't want them to, think like, "Are you gonna be okay? Like, do you wanna move back in?" You know? Um, and yeah, I never want my parents to worry, but eventually I did tell them. It was yeah, it my parents are very supportive. So they'll support me in whatever I do, but it was definitely a conversation that we had where it was like, you want to make sure I want to make sure that you're okay. And, are you going to eventually go find a real job? Are you gonna keep doing Asian Hustle Network? Or are you gonna eventually find a real job? I'm like, this is a real job. But to them, they don't understand that. So it was definitely a hard conversation, but I did try to show them that, we have a business model and this is something that is viable now. It's, people are making money through agency work and through running a community. And like there was this whole topic of like, when you start a brand, you have to start a community. You have to put community first, right? That's how you're able to grow and scale. If you don't have a community behind you, then it's very hard for you to get your product or your service out to the public. And that is also something that is very hard to understand to our parents. It's like community was not a topic that with our parents in their generation when you're starting a business. You just start a business, and there's not a lot of storytelling that goes into opening a business or starting a business. A lot of people stayed behind the scenes, right? But now it's very different. A lot of people want to be more front facing, and tell their story, and that's how you connect more deeply with your audience. So yeah, it was a hard conversation that we had, but I was able to kind of show them that this is what I do now, and it's it works. It's something that the community really needs, and especially because we're helping the Asian community. That was something that they appreciated as well, because we were benefiting. We were helping provide benefits to the Asian community. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and
Hmm.
I feel like that's always the case with like you don't want to tell your parents because you think
Hmm.
that they'll think some way or another. But I
Hmm.
feel like I've heard more stories where you end up telling your parents and they're supportive
Yeah.
because they
Hmm.
just want the best for you. And even though they don't understand, they just support you anyways. And
Hmm.
so I feel like that fear is always like it's if it feels bigger than it actually is when it actually happens. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
For sure.
Okay. So I mean, for real estate and entrepreneurship are pretty much vehicles, but the story of ownership, like of assets and narrative, it's been a driver for the Asian community. So, what do you think ownership means beyond property or like business equity?
Mm, yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I think I feel like there's two different things that I'm thinking about in terms of like ownership, because in the API community, we oftentimes want to seem like we have ownership of more things over other people. And there's a lot of competitiveness in the Asian community, right?
Mhm.
And so, like, what do I own compared to the next person, right? But I think it's definitely shifted in terms of what that means, beyond property or business equity. I think nowadays we want to say we have ownership over our voices, right? Well, as I mentioned, there's a big underrepresentation of the API entrepreneurial community, and we want to make sure that we can own our stories and our narratives and our voices, because oftentimes we have other people telling our stories for us that might not be accurately reflected. And I think it's very important for us to have these platforms or communities where we can share our stories, because it's us telling our own stories now, and now it's being accurately reflected and accurately told. So I think in terms of ownership, like to me, the first thing I think of is like owning our voices and owning our stories, and our culture as well, right? And we want to make sure that people are hearing these stories even outside of the Asian community, right? Because at the end of the day, if we are doing all of this work, we want to make sure that our stories are being told to the Asian community and beyond. Otherwise, we won't be making much progress. We want to make sure that, other people outside of the Asian community um, are well acknowledged of, the struggles and the challenges that we have in order for us to make changes in our community.
Yeah, I think, and I think like Asian Hustle Network or any other platforms like this, and we had Philip Wang as our keynote speaker at our anti-conference. It's like being able to provide representation somewhere and sharing those stories just makes it feel more attainable, right? From seeing, if I see you do it, then I'm like, oh, she kind of looks like me. Like she has the same culture background as me. Our parents probably came from immigrant, history and stuff like that. And so to hear it and to see it just, I feel like gave me confidence to be able to want to get into entrepreneurship. So I definitely resonate with that. Um, and so just kind of speaking about stories, what stories do you think aren't being told about Asian women in business?
Oh, I think as an Asian woman myself, I'm actually very quiet. Like I've always been very, very quiet as a person. Even growing up, my teachers, like in elementary school, would often tell me that I'm the most quiet person or the most quiet classmate in my whole classroom. And I don't know why that was. I think it was just me not being able to find my own voice or being scared or timid of what other people might think. And I've carried this with me up until my adulthood, even working in my corporate jobs. Oftentimes being in teams that were mostly non-Asian, they were mostly male. And it's a lot of times, in meeting rooms, for example, I would say something, or maybe offer a recommendation and someone else would say it, but then they would give the credit to another person. I think a lot of us have felt this way, right? We've all had experience like this, where we feel like we're being walked on top of, or our voices are not being heard in meeting rooms. And I think the stories that are not being told about Asian women in business are those that feel like they don't have a safe space to share their stories, right? It's not that they don't have something incredible in them, it's that they just don't have the right platforms and they don't have the right resources or communities to turn to. And that's what we're trying to do with Asian Hustle Network, is like, even for myself, it was hard for me to feel like I had a voice, but it's like I grew up in San Francisco. So I actually grew up in neighborhoods that were probably 80% Asian, right? And like hosting our events, like for example, our conferences in Las Vegas, our Uplifted conference, we've had people from the Midwest come and say, I grew up in predominantly non-Asian neighborhoods. And I'm just wondering like how it was for them to grow up in those situations and to grow up in those neighborhoods, because it must have been very hard for them to even like find their own voice, and they feel like they have to find what their identity is, right? Because even for me, I feel like sometimes I'm not Asian enough, but then also I'm also not American enough, right? So like kind of cultivating and creating those spaces where Asian women can tell their stories related to their business, I think are very important, because oftentimes we feel like we don't have those resources or communities or safe spaces.
Yeah. It's so funny. I was one of those Midwest kids. I was born in the Midwest and I grew up in a predominantly, Caucasian school. Um, and I didn't know I was Asian until I moved to California. And so I was like, wait a minute, these people look like me. So it was like this weird, like reverse culture shock or something like that. But I also had the same thing where in school I was so quiet because, well, back then they didn't have English as a second language as a class, right? And so I had to learn English just by being thrown into American school. and then just figuring it out. So I was so quiet because I didn't know how to speak the language, and then I had to figure it out. And then I think that just kind of set a foundation of being kind of shy and quiet and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
so as far as like Asian women in the kind of like the next phase of American culture, like what role do you think Asian women should have in that next phase?
Oh, I think this is perfect timing because there are so many amazing stories of Asian women just succeeding in their roles. And most recently, the Victoria's Secret runway show, Suni Lee was
Yes.
the first Hmong woman and the first US gymnast to grace the Victoria's Secret runway. So that's amazing because I feel like that really resonated with me because one, she's the first Asian American or Hmong woman, and she's not your conventional like model. She doesn't look like
Mhm.
your conventional model. She's, I think, I don't remember how tall she is, but she's very petite, and I'm very petite too. And so, everyone says, you can't be a model if you're not at a certain if you're not a certain height. Usually the typical model that you think of is like blue eyes, blonde hair. They have to be almost 6 feet tall. And I'm 4'8", so it's like, even though I don't think I'm going to modeling, but still, like looking at that, and she's 22, I think, and looking at that, that actually inspires me because that just shows me that short and petite women have opportunities like this, and it's possible. They can be on the runway of the Victoria's Secret show. So I think it's incredible. And I do think that women are amazing. We have such, we definitely have, I feel like, more capability and able to adapt to hard situations and stressful situations, and we're able to like think more logically. And I love working with women. I just feel like I resonate with them so much, and if I had a choice, I would work with all women. But I think that in these next couple of years, we're definitely going to see more of these stories come to light. It's I just feel like women are rising nowadays, and we're the most beautiful creatures on this planet. So I think that it's a great time for us to be opening businesses, starting careers that we're often told that we're not allowed to get into, and we see this happening in all different industries: real estate, fashion, makeup, beauty, anything. And it just goes to show that we're so capable, and we're more capable than we think we are. So yeah, excited to see this new generation happening, and more light coming into these stories of Asian women in business.
Yeah, love that. Um, this is so random, but you talked about like petite, and I know that you're petite. When I met you in person, I was like, oh, I didn't know how petite you were. But then I also heard that you're a power lifter, which is crazy. And so that's amazing to hear because it's like, I want to say unexpected, but I didn't know. I think I saw maybe one of your Instagrams or something like that. You're powerlifting, and so I'm just kind of curious, like what got you into powerlifting, and like what's kind of the story behind that?
Oh yeah, thank you for asking that. Yes, as you mentioned, I am very petite. I am 4'8", and to me, I wanted to again have my own voice and feel more empowered. And you can go into any sports or fitness activity that you like. But some women like Pilates, some women like Legree, right? And I think that's incredible that we're all kind of claiming this space in the fitness world now. Powerlifting just resonated with me. Like, I fell in love with it. It could be a coincidence because my first trainer was more into powerlifting, and so that was his specialty. But I fell in love with it because not only does it make me stronger physically, but it helped me so much in terms of my mental confidence. And I think that's that's the thing that made me stick with powerlifting, is because I am so small, powerlifting gave me the confidence that it shows to me that I'm capable of lifting something heavy, that I can like walk in this room and feel like I'm taking up the space of 50 men. I don't know. I'm just making up an example, but it makes me feel very strong and confident. And I think that all women should, at least try to get into strength training some way, not only from like a mental perspective, but it also helps with like, making sure that your bones are healthy as we get older. So that's, yeah, I love lifting. I think every woman should definitely do some sort of strength training, because the confidence that it gives you at the end of the day is inexplainable. It's something that keeps me in the gym every single week and reminds me that this is my safe space, and it's also a space for me to like reflect and think about business as well. It's kind of like my therapy in a way.
Yeah. I just imagine you like 4'8" walking into a gym with all these like muscly dudes.
That is the
And you're
case
like,
sometimes.
like,
Yeah.
what's this girl gonna do? Let me milk
Yes.
her, right? And then you kind of like show them up and like do
Yes.
these crazy like lifts and stuff like that. So I
Yes,
love that.
yes. Yeah, oftentimes, like, before I would be so scared to go into the weight room, but, now, usually it's all men in the weight room, and
Yeah,
it kind of feels good to be like, "I'm the only woman in here," like,
love
try
that.
to, like, size up other guys. No, I'm just kidding.
Just curious. I mean, I don't know too much about powerlifting, but like, what's like your heaviest that you can lift?
So my favorite lift is, so there's the squats, and then there's deadlift, and there's
Okay.
bench. My favorite lift is the deadlift, and so that's where you kind of like lift up the bar from the floor. I am 94 pounds, but my heaviest is that I've lifted is 200. That's still not a lot compared to like some other women powerlifters that I know. I'm trying to get to 222, 225, because that is two plates on each side. But I haven't gotten there yet. So
What about you said there's a squat?
yes,
What's the
squat.
squat?
That's not too heavy for me. I think my heaviest is like 165 or something like that. Yeah.
I can't even imagine lifting 100 pounds. So it's a good I lift like a 50-pound like speaker, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so heavy.
That's different though. Like if you ask me to carry groceries, I'm like struggling left and right because the position is different,
The form is
Yeah,
different, right?
exactly.
Maggie, do people come up to you just because they see you're small, or men come up to you be like, "Do you need to get do you need a
Yes.
spot?"
Help. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Or like
that's
I have a water softener in my house, so every time I need to refill it with the salt pellets, I have to go to Home Depot and get like these big bags of
Bag.
salt
Yeah.
pellets. But they're 40 pounds each. And this this like old man walked past me and was like, "Do you need help?" I'm like, "I'm okay, I got it."
I love that. Well, Maggie, I thank you so much for a powerful conversation today. I really liked what we talked about today. I mean, just the start of Asian Hustle Network, I think, has been really cool to see and how much it's grown. It's crazy to hear that overnight it went to a thousand members. I think that's just a good start off to just the future of Asian Hustle Network. And I love that it's a platform to share stories and for other people like us to connect and say like, hey, you can do this too, and there's a support system, there's a ecosystem to help you be successful. So it sounds like that's kind of where Asian Hustle Network is heading to. And I love that you're redefining the word hustle, and making it a more positive connotation rather than something that's in a negative light, and also just redefining like the hard work ethic, right? And so our hard work is different from our parents' hard work, but it's still hard work that it needs to be done, and redefining it obviously will just make us more successful. And then I think the last piece is just like you said, owning our stories and being able to share those stories, I think are just the most important piece to us being able to continue to elevate and grow, as a culture. So, um, Anita?
Yeah. So before we wrap up, for our next generation of Asian founders, investors, or side hustlers, what's a big next evolution for Asian Hustle Network? What does 2026 look like for you guys?
Yeah. So I mentioned about how we started Asian Also Network. A lot of the work that we do today, on top of leveraging our platform to amplify Asian entrepreneurial stories, we also host a lot of events. So we host events across the US, Australia, Southeast Asia, and Canada. Um, and we also provide a lot of resources and services to Asian entrepreneurs just to provide more value to them, seeing how we can help them grow and scale. But I think for the next big evolution of AHN, we definitely want to be seen as the central hub that people think of as they look to start a business, or maybe they're a newly Asian entrepreneur and they don't really know how to get started. I would say we want to position Asian Hustle Network as that powerhouse and that central hub that people think about as soon as they start their business. And then on top of that, we're trying to tap into other communities as well, just to see if we can kind of create this again powerhouse. And so kind of similar to how like a lot of makeup brands are under Lancome, or like a lot of beverage brands are under Pepsi and Co, right? We want to be, Asian Also Network wants to be that powerhouse that works with all of these other communities as it relates to maybe culture, sports, entertainment, right? Anything that's related to the AAPI kind of diaspora. So for sure, 2026 is going to be. I hope there's going to be more events happening, especially as we look to host events in cities that don't have a lot of attention. For example, we've hosted a lot of events in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and New York City, but there's these other cities that don't have a lot of API events happen, but have a huge API population. For example, like Houston or Seattle, Hawaii, and maybe Washington, D.C., right? These are cities with growing API populations that we want to put more focus and attention towards. So yeah, hopefully we can, we're coming up with an event calendar now, and hopefully we can provide more value and benefits to those communities and those cities.
Awesome. And so those events are, what type of events are they? The ones that you're
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have events that are as big as maybe like 600 people. This is our signature event called the Uplifted Conference that we host in Las Vegas. But we also have smaller events, more intimate events. And, a lot of the community members were actually looking for more intimate events. Conferences are great, but, sometimes it is hard to connect with everyone at these events since it's so big. And so we've been trying to do more smaller events. Sometimes we'll partner with maybe financial institutions or venture capital firms or law firms. And depending on what these partners are looking for, maybe financial institutions are looking for clients that they can bring on, that they can provide financial services to. We'll kind of curate the community and the audience for those specific events and connect the two together and bridge that gap. Because again, these founders are often looking for resources, or just tapping into maybe opportunities that they otherwise might not know about. And then we also have our economic summit. So this was something that was started by the White House initiative on AANHPI. We have kind of taken the torch and continuing the economic summit, which is where we invite a lot of politicians, government leaders, just to provide more information on resources at the the city, state, and federal levels. Maybe there are grant opportunities, maybe there are just resources that small business owners should know, and connecting them with the small businesses in those regions. So yeah, a lot of these events happen across the US, but they're also, sometimes we'll have them in Australia, Canada, and Southeast Asia.
Nice.
Mhm.
And I think the other thing that folks might not know is not only is Asian Hustle Network a community and a platform to connect, but you guys also do have your creative and digital arm of it. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So we have a digital marketing solutions agency called Asian Hustle Solutions. And we started this because initially, as you know, we started as a community, but more business owners were looking for resources in terms of like, how do I get my social media started? How do I build a website? I don't have any of those resources, and I don't have someone on my team to be able to do that. And I'm not a technical person. So we've been able to build a team to provide those resources. So through Asian Hustle Solutions, we want to provide more value in that sense, where we provide website design, website development, ads and SEO management, video editing services, branding strategy, content marketing, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just another way for us to just provide more value to AAPI founders and helping them grow and scale.
I love that. I think if our parents, like my family had a Chinese restaurant when I was growing up, and I wish we had you guys, because I felt like if we had the digital and creative strategy behind it, we would have been like the Panda Express today. And so I always think
Yeah.
about that. It was called Mr. Egg Roll, and it was such a cool like brand, and the food was amazing. And I mean, I guess I'm biased because I grew up with it, but my family always talks about it. We're like, we wish we had some resource to help us elevate our business, because I think if we had that, it would have just, taken off even better. So,
Yeah.
all right, Maggie. Well, I appreciate the time today. We're super excited to have you on the show, and loved what you talked about today.
Likewise.
So if this episode resonated, share it with a friend and hit follow. And any last words, Anita?
No, I am just really grateful to have you, Maggie, and all the best for Asian Hustle Network. You guys are amazing. Just whatever Sarah has been doing, I feel like has been just behind Asian Hustle Network. So,
Oh no, Sarah has been amazing. I mean, you both have built something amazing, and I was able to experience it and witness it, in front of me at the conference, and just incredible what you've been able to build, especially give space to so many women investors, real estate professionals, and I feel like it's very important. So we're all just doing our best right now, and yeah, I'm very grateful for you both to have me on this podcast and for us to have this conversation.
Yeah, there's not that many people I think that do what we do at the scale that we do, and I think we all have the general goal of trying to serve our community to, as Phil says, send the elevator back up and really lean in to highlight this amazing community that we have and help them build wealth, help them build businesses. So appreciate you. Thank
Absolutely.
you so much, Maggie, for everything.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Ashley.
Thanks, Maggie.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the SARE Ladies Podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, make sure to follow, share, and leave us a review. It helps more women in real estate find this community. And don't forget to connect with us at sareladies.com for more resources, stories, and support on your investing journey. Until next time, keep building, keep learning, and keep breaking barriers.